Tatelea 다 가자 원도 주변에 시에 지 가져다 최체바디 가져다지 최체아디 아니 다다네베 가져다 dento디니도 산라도 튠디니도 산라도 다간다 다다라네베 군주 최고야지다 아니 냠레 최고야지 레마도베 다디 에네베 치슈 쳔네 아니 선인능이 제제 근데 제비미나 아니 최야 아버지 가져다 랑주도 말했어야지 딱히 좀 차대요 아래
As we discussed yesterday, when we are practicing the Dharma, we need to practice the Dharma from now. It's as it said, we need to do it on this seat, in this very session. It's right now that we need to begin the Dharma. It's right now that we need to practice the Dharma. If we postpone it, if we think to ourselves, I'm going to do it tomorrow or the next day, then we will not be able to really practice the Dharma well. And so it is important to understand this.
다대한 디나는 질 녀송의 동에를 이마시베 미기와 첨부체발은 남미 동에 미종 가존주 코아의 님이 주세야만 통은 된 타시에를 미지 실쇼 대나 디베라는 녀버시는 소알바브 예체바 가르시 대한 기디 군제 마시베레바인 대나 디산 타바 민뢰베 타바 주바베 유종人왕체 총와 해점바를 저와체 군내진의 미통신의 지회 조화는데 개외 초라 주주 체발라 촉수 송네 지보다 롱덤 체발라 니진제네 지겐라对他 제만되네 유매세 이민비 전도 노유의 유토의 모습 마변 바르베 순시 사사의 현례지 근데를 녀바 기지진 차와이
As it says here, generally people do not believe in the suffering of the lower realms. So they decide that great acts of non-virtue will not ripen as suffering. They do not see any faults at all in samsara, and thus waste their entire lives for the sake of a few paltry sensory pleasures. If they knew how misdeeds would harm them, it is hardly possible that they would commit them, even at the cost of their own lives. The fault is not knowing the causes and results of virtue and misdeeds. So these days, instead of accomplishing liberation, people who do not want to be liberated try to become an influential loudmouth in some small place. Even in a monastery, they put effort into being more visible than anyone else. They think that they have been diligent enough about virtue, but are able to spend all day and all night fornicating and speaking meaninglessly. They do not want to cut the ties to the world and call everyone who knows nothing to them. They make connections, try to impress people with wealth or high status, and suspect those lower than themselves of criticizing them. Only after hoarding things for themselves will they give them to others. Such people are called lunatics with rigid spines.
세상에 가장 땅랑 섬주를 가장 뭐 쉬는 시에 최체 스두산에 아니 신나 밴드 가져다지 미스 셴차스게 유기 말에 조다 기디 랑도로 차디 기디 랑도로 추신 차들이야 안 최체 쓰요라서
It is as I said yesterday, my opinion is that when we talk about practicing the Dharma, then there's really nothing else to do. But really, Dharma primarily is doing what is good and giving up what is bad. That is what practicing the Dharma is.
다 기디기 랑도 체고나 다 기디기 균제 모셰고 야래 유칸 사발레 데네 다 가츠웨지 드부 상보당 드부 대원 주고 예바 유칸 사발레 데네 드부 냐바다 동행 주고 예바 다데 모셰고 야래.
And so, if we are going to practice virtue and give up misdeeds, then we first need to know what the causes and the results of misdeeds and virtues and misdeeds are. And so, we need to be we need to understand what are the results of when we do virtue. What are the results? How is it that good results come from them and pleasure comes from them? And likewise, we need to know how the results of wrongs are bad results and painful.
참 아주 뒤즈만 셀이야 가르쳐줘야 오늘은 true sort of happiness somewhere 디기 뭐마다 이 통기 디기를 데 가는 중요해디 아주 시랑 고마스지 디제당 고마스에 바당 ene jikashwe samlu tongda no rujin ji yebe insan tigi kadui ne ngaso de kangye so de yadas.
But most of the time, we don't really know what true happiness is. We don't know what genuine happiness is, and we don't understand it. Because we do not understand what true happiness is, or we have an incorrect way of thinking about it. Because of that, often we experience many difficulties.
More materialism, some of that. 제가 미마부지기 가르친 거 알았으나 지 친구벽이 차겐다 내기 비숨 서버지 충분히 이미나 안 아주 되게 용거래 삼아르지 퇴용함에 되게 토고래 기본 용거래 삼아르지 미상메다 버지 딘데르 텐데게 알아 제가 디토라 emphasis 삼아르베 디토라베 저와체 디토리아베 소수에게 룽아 예수 군리버베 뽕뽕는 조요 알아.
And so these days, in the 21st century, you can say it's a very materialist time. And so most people have the idea that external things, or the belief that external things will bring them happiness. So most people think that because of the conditions or because of external things, that will bring them the situation they need and the happiness, and that will lead them to the true happiness. That will bring them to the real meaning. And so many people then, thinking in this way, they put their emphasis on this. They like combine all their powers of their body and speech in this direction.
The material somewhere that's 친구벽이 저 가수로다 자기 가스지기 배 망아 충분히 디지지기 소소 가수로다지 disturbed somewhere 다바지 다들 벽에 라자지 라심다 한다 나 가수로지 소소 아니 지기 녀가 살로 알아 지당 다나시 자와 살로 알아 뭐 비즈니스만 들을 줄 알아 안 다나신기 소수기 탐배지 소수 운에 전에기 정신기 natural 유유서만 다시 소수 정신 뭐만 되다 안 타린도린도를 줘야지 예 타마를 두산은 즉 소수 운에 전에지 가리면 대발라 다나시 미유 가리면 대지 가르쳐지 세버로 매매 차치 invisible 차치 드리지기데 소소엘라 소소 미유데라 드리지네 간다 상월로라도 알아보지 용데도 상월라라시 디스비에즈만 드리지
But when we have material things, when we think about external things or external facilities, then the more we have of these, then the more disturbances we have, the more difficulties we have. Things get more and more problematic. We have more and more busyness. And so what happens then is that it's like we lose ourselves, we lose our nature, what really is there. That becomes like we lose that. And in the end, we've lost everything that we have, and we end up also losing any aims that we might have had. They become unclear and indistinct. They become invisible to us. And so eventually what happens is that we lose ourselves, and we lose our aims, and we end up just losing everything.
다디 윤세대네 다 미가시지기 가주에다 지 팅상 지 가주 미가시지기 spiritual part 다디 지 가주 시스템라 남주인기 가서 총계를 난거 소화를 시게 되입니다. 시스템의 디기를 시다 용매에 붙여 시스템이야 안에 가주에다 가주 쿠르 전부 용되게 붙이 pressure 정말 쿠르 전부 용되게 붙이 용기에 인상 안에 디자지 spiritual part 들 체제 그 최 소마르다 지 딘데게 랑가르 체하기 되니지게 할 것이 다이면 딘데게 최치하데 진로 마셔비미나 가산 쉬는시 지 최사데 지 람록스여르 지 대신 드라마도베 소소기 다 남주에서는 다도 다 위스점 서머베다 지 딘데게 또한 비주얼 당시에 가더를 가르쳐야베 진짜 제모도 비미나 안 참선은 최 코란로 spiritual materials 심서머베다지 최니 인디아를 지리 안 대고야지 가르쳐야봐야 지된베 아주 남균기야 material 서머베 응어불이야 칭어불이야 되게 제대로는 신지기 최저 냠는 자대 양 디그 가르쳐야지 초원도 참 신체 딱 한다 디 셈이야 쉽지게 지편도 용돼야지 당 다나 신기 에네 셈의 시디 드린트야 돼 가버르 지금엔 로성도
And so for that reason, many people these days think that they need to find some sort of a spiritual path. They feel like living in their cities and towns that they're not happy or they aren't able to find satisfaction. And so they feel like they need to they feel like living there's more pressure on their minds. There's like this burden that that weighs on them. And so they feel like they need to search for some sort of a spiritual path. And so they look for a spiritual path, or they look for the path of Dharma. But when they want to practice Dharma, then they don't know how to practice the Dharma. It's as I was saying yesterday. It's like it becomes a custom, and then they're unable to use their own intelligence, or you could say they're unable to use their own wisdom. And so when that happens, then the Dharma becomes for them, it becomes like spiritual materialism. And it's like something that they need for themselves. They think of it just in the same way that they think of external things, and they think that they need to practice the Dharma in order to help themselves. They pretend that Dharma is going to help them, but in this situation, it is difficult for it to bring any peace into their minds.
제사 단디나는 소문난시 최진이만되네 지주된바나요. 현대계 인간의 쇼와 디네 가게난로 자와체계 제세네 미곰콤 밀레블레 미타르탈망보체 가나친게 타주 일로게 뒤메 가르친서 자녀니 자조르지기 링네 제스미르체 최베솔의 미지게 되네 거에다 배자다 최샤 대자 저리를 저와되네 rango korwe shola shengu shugi reng shugi kor tambe chue mi jena rang la phaptop gi lama da gindun ki tsen debe tuen la ji tatar chene ginyom la gya dang kwe da namda se chagu chituk len zho rang gi che yu gi chwa sam nor ye ba ngol lo de bu chir gyagar doji den zho la tsik me
So as it says here, they don't want to practice dharma from their hearts. So when they are taught how, they get lost in the distracting circumstance of talk about benefiting others. Or else they say that they don't have the time and have to go someplace or have to do such and such a thing. They never come, they're never free, yet they do many things. Wherever they go, they never make up their minds. Anywhere they go, they divide people into friends and enemies in less time than it takes to make tea. They want to spend their lives looking like Dharma practitioners, so they go to great lengths to get robes, texts, ritual items, thrones, and a gathering of monks. In the process of fooling themselves, they automatically deceive others. They never remember the true Dharma, but use whatever Lama or Sangha they happen to get as freely as they wish for the sake of this life, using up all their food, clothing, and time in laziness. They go around touching foreheads. They would have no problem going to Bodh Gaya in India in order to deceive friends that they are attached to, or those who have wealth.
Chanju sembe the nyamler bi chige bi nga chanju sembe yinza lamsanji kashwe ji chanju sembe chebar bi chene shendön be lamsanji kashwe da physically to ne de char bi ngene ya chanju sem se du zo de an chanju sembe yimin sa de so su simgyuli ya an chanju gi sem luwa me ba ji manor moju ba ji ge do mi do da de be 개치슈르지 녜리아 아주 배 공부 담버지 마서네 디 제과르지 레디 삼자랑 아주야 데디 쇼라르지 야지 이 람사 가르베 전주선배 몇 다돼야들이야 아주 대화르지 랑제 에네 남사지 제과나르 샤데르지 용디야레 다나 신기 아주지 상아 쉐르 제비나 다나 신제다 physical rituals amara ta digidliya be kas lamsa ji ti awur start diar dilia ji kaswe zwan de monet ne gi sanga gi be girim da zorim gi nyamne dilia ati shordur ji 당시에 드는 조대야 근데 샤비미나 energy spiritual kaswe de materialism sort of chache and tamara dusane de quran rai anda kaswe ji ng어보 되녀르지 마도베기 지 룽아기 차와 되녀르지 야나 카치데기 쳐르지 마도베 안 카낭도 쳐네 소수기 다시 녀몰이야 녀보 지 조예메 다나시 수수셈 류예메 다나신기 가수에다 삼바상도 친예메사로 딘디질이야 진장으로 이렇게 텔레 딘디질이야 펜도르게 마중세 아니 배 룽아게 차와디기디 지 야게 당데 브치마도베 메데브르스텔 딘데 차위미나 아니 지 spiritual materialism som마르베다 최 지주되는 쉐에 버질이야 대야지 치다 룽아섬 치다 응어버섬으로베 남교 다 딘지 된데 냐바 잠실이야 로로야기 냥가 예데버지 임바레 소임자
And so what this is saying is that sometimes when we practice Dharma, we think that we need to show some sort of external or physical sign of it. We need to actually do something for the benefit of others. We need to show something. So we think, oh, I'm doing the practice of a bodhisattva. I'm a bodhisattva, so I need to actually do something to physically help someone else. But with bodhicitta, the primary thing about bodhicitta, and whether it is or isn't bodhicitta, depends upon... with a bodhisattva, the primary thing about a bodhisattva is really whether in their mind they have the true undeceiving bodhicitta, the unmistaken and unconfused bodhicitta, undiluted bodhicitta within their mind. Really, that undeceived bodhicitta within our mind is the first thing that we need to take care of. But most people do that on the side, and first they try to put on the show of the signs of being a bodhisattva, and try to act out being. That's a physical thing. It is the same with the secret mantra Vajrayana. We pay a lot of attention to the rituals. We think that we have to show something or learn how to do the recitations or something. And when we do the recitations, we recite the rituals, but whether this is actually the true creation phase or completion phase of the secret mantra is something that is only coming on the side. And so when we sort of fall into that direction, then it really becomes the spiritual materialism. It's like we think that it's like a thing that we need to have, an external material thing that we need to have. It is the action of our body and speech. This is practicing Dharma when we're focusing outside. But instead, what we need to do is we need to turn our attention inwards, and we need to see whether what we're doing is functioning as an antidote for the afflictions or not. We need to see whether we are taming our mind or not. We need to see whether our mind is improving, getting kinder or not. But if we don't look at that, if we don't look in that way, then there's no benefit to do this. And so then it becomes something that we're merely doing with our bodies and speech. And the moment that happens, then this becomes spiritual materialism. And so really when... what we need to do is, we think that we're trying to do the Dharma, but actually we are just doing external things with our body and speech. We are like making a show with our body and speech. We are putting on appearance in this way, and that is really all that we are taking interest in.
이래 다지 디가레스나 미지기 코랑 삼발이야 최체대 유에삼제 안 코라 gebde yores 디 최대는 코라 gebde yores 다바 지메시지 때 시행문도다 최대는 코라 gebde yores 안다 가담비 게베시니지 페이지 안 교란데 가르치데 유에스 Continental Hindustan ta ngap chöche de yus kora gebde di chöche de yus la oda di kyorang di kora gya de yabur re di ina tandong be chö namda ji chebi na yabur res da de sun res o kresambar o ngebe kora gya de chöngone de izamare di mayin ba ji chegu chöngone di mayin ba ji chayu sare samje 땅고 지삼으로 다지 안디 제마 양고 가르쳐서 베지 데브르 마스베 지기 베지 데지 데브르스 베지 데브르 사르브지 아르다 야 딘데시 디소르심베 다가 지베시 신문도 다가 디스바 스웨산 좀죠 다 베지 데지 데브르스 아니 베지 데지 데류사네 아니 야 당기 다는 시간에 그런 가르치스 아베 최신데 그냥 베스다데 알레디 나 단동베 최남다 시나 야버레스 아 디제들 양지 양고 딱 오늘 최자데 베스다데 있어만다 최시스 오늘 곰자데 있으래 섬치 아고 곰을 이렇게 지 잡다는 지세제 데브레스 아야 가던 베게시니 디베시 그리는 주산에 교랑 같이 되어스 그리는 주산에 한국아 최시 되어스 다리다 고디스 지기 한 뽑아를 치장 안에 최시 되어스 안 가담에 계신이 양조 교랑에 공자대 아버레스 이나 텔레 최 남다 시나 야그레스 야그르다스 순주산 안다 베데코베 고베제 당원에 최 남다르데 근데를 제고야나스 배 망보 남주 미주 제대하듯 최인스 제대하듯 상원을 최래면도 딱 간대를 제고야나스 말이지 하나로 전제 다 진짜 기지죠래 다 간다야 재상 아주 지 최제스도 사는 망보지기 삼례 나로리아 디소로 지다 되다 초충부터 지 망보지 삼례 나로리아 디를 지원디 요래 다 디데 망 지다 디데 요래디 이미네 룽아 개조사디 요래디 이미네 다 조조지确实松马松沙的做的确肯这几样是两百一年的人员给他牛毛对为年不了松马松当那这心具这为年不了松马心具人给我当土原面这类啊大起来嘛到被先去能就被上不如这当大那先给가서다 지금 냠 되버르지 근데질이야 아니 최레스 랍토야르스 메버르지 근데 디 준세 때는 야 근데 토냐 가서야지 투섬 셰 과데 계스미르 짐자
There's a story about Kadampa, great Kadampa master. Maybe many of you have already heard this story. So the story is that once there was a man who thought to himself, I need to practice Dharma. So what am I going to do to practice Dharma? And he thought to himself and he decided, I'm going to go circumambulate a stupa. So he went and he was circumambulating the stupa. And while he was circumambulating the stupa, this Kadampa spiritual friend, Geshe, came by, and the Geshe asked him, well, what are you doing? And he replied, oh, I'm practicing the Dharma. I'm circumambulating the stupa. And the Geshe, the Kadampa Geshe, replied to him, oh, that's very good. But if you were to practice some true Dharma, that would be even better. And so the man thought to himself, oh, what does that mean? That must mean that maybe circumambulating stupas isn't really true Dharma practice, and I need to do something different. So what can I do? He thought to himself. And he thought to himself, and then, I'm not sure if I'm getting this quite right, so maybe I'm making it up, but he thought to himself, okay, I'm going to read and study texts. And so he was sitting there reading the text, studying, and as he was reading and studying, then the same Kadampa master came by and asked him the same question. Oh, what are you doing? And he thought to himself, oh, I'm practicing the Dharma. I'm really practicing the Dharma. I'm reading and studying right now. And then the Kadampa master said to him the same thing. He said, oh, that's very good. But if you were to practice some true Dharma, that would be even better. And so this man was thinking to himself, okay, circumambulating is not practicing the Dharma, and reading texts must also not be practicing the Dharma. So what can I do to practice the Dharma? Oh, meditating, that must be the thing that I need to do to practice the Dharma. And so he sat there as if he's meditating, and he's sitting there meditating. The Kadampa master comes along and asks him again, oh, what are you doing? He said, now he was really confident in himself this time. I'm practicing the Dharma, I'm meditating. And then again, the Kadampa master said to himself, it's wonderful that you're meditating, but it would be even better to practice some true Dharma. And so now this man is wondering to himself, what is it that I can possibly do? All of the things that he normally thought of as being Dharma practice are not actually the true Dharma. So what is the Dharma practice? And so I think normally when we think about practicing the Dharma, we think about it like this. Now, of course, there are physical and verbal things that we do. We can do spiritual things with our body and speech. But the question in terms of whether it actually is the Dharma or is not, the main matter is when we are doing Dharma practice is this working as an antidote for our afflictions or is it not? Is this something that is taming our stream of mind, or is it not? That is what we need to pay attention to. But instead, we often look at our external expression of this, our external appearance, and we try to look as good as we could. We try to appear as good as if we have this experience as much as we can, but we aren't really practicing the Dharma. And so this is something that is very important for us to contemplate and reflect upon.
아주 가리면 당 아주 easy 레라데 레라부 주는 거 한번 가봐요 봐. 칼레 하부디 가두이네 지 칼레 하부도 치제 제장 레라부를 준비는 아주 레라 제장 미망부지게 룽아가 제아디스 레라를 줘로 다 고치 제샤르지 비게 미된샤르 제비 인상 and ji karsweda karine ji tesa tönjo relatively somarbe lela ru jore ta semni ji chaor se dustan ta di ji sosu ji chena ma mi shinda ge delia mi se karsweda juranga cha den rig ma sonda la ya sta me de bi ta sosu gi mene ta jaji de cheche chaar ma do mi shinda ge ni be ji la phas kana khamre 제자베 소수익베 full responsibility 이렇게 고를 받아 개인 연소 소수익 고를 받아 메신다 니베지 것도 많아 이나 류가를 요아 땅바 잠시기 미딘 요아 미기다 personal identity 소르베 고라 미人心세란다 미디 시가도 요아 땅 도다 류가 넘주 강상상 된 초래 가지고지 act 제제베 넘주루 다 임비나 personal identity somarbeta ji midi shigam midi renxin midi be shinibe yuwa tonggu yewimina shiza qur'an yuwa tonggu yewina karin yuwa tonggu rusana midi samadongda midi ji gulong kedang 다나 ji midi tawe kesuru degree yuwa tonggu yaru chigare tin yuwa madang badu midi yuwa madang baduchi midi ngumada ra dede baduchi 융아 같은 교가 땅비네 미딩마 라자라지 인데버지 차르고 봐. 근데 이 준센터 당 아주 최 냠는 제스도 가르쳐 오르스나 유아 동사다 가르스나 미디 시가 미코라 시전에 유아 동거 알지. 대 가르스나 아주에게 다지 셈리아 다다 하나 등에 대시
So what we normally think, or maybe you all will agree with this, but at any rate, my opinion is that what we all really like is we like the things that are easy. We like easy things, things that are simple. And things that are difficult, they're always hard, they're always difficult. So we like the easy things. And it's easier to work with our body and speech. When we work with our body and speech, there's something to show of it. We've got something that can be seen. And so for this reason, it is relatively easier to do. But when we work with our minds, and working with our minds, we do something with it, but other people can't really judge what we have. They can't say what we have done or not. And so the only one who can really judge what is happening is ourselves. Because of that, we each have to take individually, we have to take the full responsibility on ourselves. We have to carry the entire burden ourselves, and there's no second person whom we can turn to or who can help in this. when we do things with our body and speech, then it's not like that's our personal identity. It's not like our character or anything. We can change. It's just an act, something that we are doing. But if we really want to change our character, if we want to change our identity or change our nature, if we want to change ourselves in some sort of a fundamental way, what is it that we actually need to change? What we actually need to change is the way we think about things. We need to think about how we develop motivations. We need to change our entire our belief systems. And so that is what we need to change. Until we change that, until we change those, then there's no way you can say that, oh, that person has really changed. You can do many different things and change your body and speech, but still be the same person, have the same character. And so when we do practice and we do Dharma practice, we want to have some sort of a change, then what we really want to change is we want to change our character. We want to change the fundamental way that we are.
인삼 지라지 마치 데다 탱고하스게 뭐 인지 미지 가수에다 수 두부십지 인삼 탱고하지 게요 만다디 대 두자레샤 두부십지 인삼 탱해야 돼. 다 임비냐 소소리 야게 동아야 되지. 지디즈 가수에 만당웨기 다 가수에 지 차르 주에 되지 야게 동아야 되지 퍼지 소소 물레로 장마 채고 알으시래 원해서 따디 물레로 장마 채비네 아니 신내지 야게 동도 연구로 이네 가수디 가수 물레 채야돼 다 소소기 다 간다 바 만당웨 차 교육이 차로 디디 디디지야베 물레 채야돼 아주지 가수에 커버지 연기도 와 드리 루산의 대균선 때에 다 간다 가수에 다 가리네 지디스 가라 하버시도
So we need to change our own nature. We need to improve. We need to bring it in a good direction. We need to make our nature or our character better. But this is often extremely difficult for us to do. And the reason that it's difficult for us to do is that most of us think to ourselves, "I'm pretty good." And so we think, I'm pretty good. We don't really think to ourselves, I'm bad. Of course, actually, there's no reason to think to yourselves, I'm bad. And there's no need to think about that. And even thinking of yourself as being bad is in itself a harmful thing. But we need to improve ourselves, and when we need to improve ourselves, then we need to recognize those areas within ourselves that we need to clean up, those areas that we need to improve. And so only when we recognize those areas, and then begin to clean up those areas that we need to improve, only at that time do we begin to improve ourselves. But usually we don't really identify those areas where we lack something or where we have problems. It's difficult for us to recognize these, and so it becomes a difficult situation for us all the way around.
제가 미망부 뒤에 위나 继续给说当俺这么不写呢居民经过要你这钱的让去了么里上班的差为居民都呢个与土之间如果显老真给的你看到如果显老的你看到
In the middle of large groups of people, they say many impressive things about the public good, fooling people with no experience. There is not even a moment when the thought occurs to them that such behavior is not good. Compassionate Kajus, the practiced lineage of those who naturally have revulsion, think of them.
남규임이나 가수다 가수 다대 좋습니다. 제가 다들이야 배나 나랑 춘춘 거두잖아요. 나랑 춘춘 거리야 에너지 가수다. 데 쿠류 스마르 다시 나랑 춘춘 거리야 샤르브 사디 와래. 다 드네 야갈레다 다다 샤스 사게야 말해. 마음을 가차를 가시. 다 드네 세드산 지진에 고 다 예민해 지 가수에 가르스나 팅사야 가르사 바요 가르사 지세도아 베나 랑셰 디치리 베기 가수에 man-made so much with langsha suene langgo se ma go che langsha suas do 제상 가상 미지 알아졌어 마오 발라디니 랑고 se ma go ba langsha suas 체리 비 미세베 langsha de su에나 디디 그냥 langsha 수에 메서 디디 네 상무 당기 인사죠 다임비는 게 샤면서 랑고세마스 지비셔드인 이 말이 진짜 대모임 버지 유에 삼사로지 되다 정도다. 제상 간다 디 제상아 춘춘거두스탄에 미세디 교인 이브르게 신고 말해. 다 드네 야갈레 지두스탄에 샤 방사고 균제르디. 수수 균제르 통지 샤 방사두스탄 다 tinsan 고바익스머버다지 우리가 대비 니수일 삼탄이다. 바데 가르 디가고 미디다 대기 거기다 샤사데 샤상게 차네다 배데 가르소지 요아친데 버르지. 데 퍼스널 데벤 요아친데 버르지 네비타니고. 제자다 조조디 균제 삼단지. 소수기 지 미진앙기 냠뇽레 다나신 양타베 균제도 삼단지. 아니 소소리아 아니 가수야지 리베 차트서 공배도 당과야지 다디지 조조지 소소소소리아 죄답지 소소소리아 라브지 겹진 줘야지 마도베 데 미니버시기 결혼을 야본디지 결혼을 누자한디레스체 미니버시기 랍투야데 깔라카버샤데 지당다 고르 가수에 로봇체도 그래 마도베 문에 자네기지 상당 연기배 현재하디 수수치아지레 마도베기 다디 미니버지 제토야디 가가합시다레 제상 디균센데네 에너지 가수에 수수면에 다디 가수 리니기 등진차과디 계심시다레샤
And so, like for an example of this, when I was young, at that, then I ate meat. Then when I came to India, I stopped eating meat. In the future, who knows what's going to happen? I stopped eating meat. I was vegetarian.
Okay, stop.
Yeah.
Stop.
If I misspoke, excuse me. I stopped eating meat. In the future, whether I'll eat meat or not, who knows? These days, they tell me there are these scientists who are growing cow meat in the laboratory so that you can have a steak without having to butcher a cow. And so in the future, people are going to ask me, are you going to, when they have a steak that you can eat without killing a cow, are you going to eat that sort of meat? And this is something I say, I'll have to think about it. I think maybe it won't really be quite the same as actually eating meat. At any rate, when I was young, I really didn't know the problems. I didn't know the faults of eating meat. Then when I came to India, I began to learn the reasons why you shouldn't eat meat. And so when I was thinking about this and then thinking about the faults and the reasons that I then was able to make the change. And so so in this perspective, in terms of whether I eat meat or not, there has been a change, a personal change in me in terms of eating meat or not. And so the main thing in terms of changing ourselves is that we need to think about the reasons. We need to contemplate and reflect on the reasons. And we need to think about this in terms of the experiences that we have in this life, as well as the good, strong reasons that we have. And when we do that, then we can really, we need to do that in order to be able to improve or increase the qualities that we have within ourselves. So this is something where we need to talk about it with ourselves. We need to give ourselves advice about doing this. It's not really a case where some other person can come up to say, okay, this part of you is good, this part of you is not so good. Of course, they can help you to to see what is good or bad, but the person who really can tell and distinguish what's good and what's bad in yourself is yourself. We have to distinguish this individually, and it's difficult for any other person to tell you. And so for that reason, it's something that we need to recognize within ourselves. And so it is really important for us to really examine ourselves to see what is good and what is not.
Information error somewhere chatting chesan di junzen tene an nga zue ka shwe ji sosu gi linye gi zambulin liya ka shwe influence samarwe shugyen ro khanje thegi yebde ser ro di yare individual samarwe mi gerba chi gi ene chaje linye le tene zambulin liya penyo gi jaba chugu yebde ko ser ro di yare. Today we use dene ngazue linye di ngazu michi ge linye di ane paji ji zambuling ge linye dang kashwe zambuling ge kashwe da didu dang deba thamso ru cha de ji mi zang di yunzen dene ane ngazue ji sosu linye da je cha ge kashwe gyumzen di be kashwe ting sab de dwa ji dang ja cha ru dwa ji on di sep sha de sha today Hindustane 당만은 게 마음 쉬자래. 아주 좋아 미디 초진에 아주 너무 상계배기 최고 중요나네. 무슨 게 자천부를 precious human lives 아주 미르르 뭐체 에베 가서 배에 거는 니가와 장이 거는 니가와 다망부 시야요. 다이네 미망부치 tinsan zomling tolia mi change chaje ngemba begarwe mi lenge chabuji mangbu saye bi inzang mi mangbu samle nalo mi saadi dujaji mi saadi shena chabuji zomling dilia kaswata 배 풍주 체슈의 미인데 버지 딘지 전화 용디 하래 제상 삼삼 미디링 알 저링도 따데 그냥 좀 나버 상계 미디 자심 있어도 하시 아니 미디 간데도 저분이 더래 녀로 성에 미리도 어디 간데 자심 버렸어 밀류 림보치 자심 마더 림보치 뒤에 가서래 녀로 뭐 하셔 잘했어 다 드네 인도스탄에 디균전 때네 재상 아주기 저기 밀류 다 오늘 전에다 자천부 인데 다 우토도스탄에 우토도 다 렌시라게 하면은 신다게 가다 오늘 저는 자천부 인데 남로 먹요래서 아들지 다 드네 시에나마도 미세 가수에다 시야 메데버르지 재상 아주 시제 차네 나솔레베 상행기베 가수에다 간달 상행섬으로베 체다 풀리야 상보는 하버도 체기 상당히 좀 풀리야 에너지 상당히 컨디션 용거 딘디지 삼로 뽕하기 뉴버르지 나서 밀리아래 이미데 나서 미 디렉 삼동아 뉴버디 배주 로봇단제 소수기 장든 버시기 체도 배주 당과 인상 에네 디 강에 풍주의 망보지 용대야를 지용되게 하래 제가 디균전 때 땅아주 강에 쉽시 체리가 저분이 돌이야 강에 쉽시 체리가 하래 우만디슬라가 총 저분이 돌이야 아주 남기 다다 시다 톰다 지 현안 사업을 지고 하래 틸리 거로 가르쳐야지 그 킬로미터 가시 가서 산에 용구예비는 지 차선지를 용되게 하래 오늘 제가 지수로 전생디 아주 미인데 버리지 디네 디균전 때네 삼로 따비네 신앙계 버리지 되셔 제가 디균전 때네 아주 링예디 미게게 링예디 계시면 임비지당 될래야 아니 상속의 요화동과디 점불링기 시대당 아니 점불링기 디도당 제가 첨부를 차대야지 임지 도섬시하고야데 계시면 주의사를 삼트니
So these days, we say the world is in the information age, and so in this information age, it's like people are all getting closer and closer connections with us, with each other. And so all the people in the world are seeing that they have closer and closer connections with each other, greater mutual connections. These are deeper and stronger connections. And so this is getting clearer, has become very clear to us. And so, in this way, when we think about our own good acts and wrong acts, we think we can see more clearly how they have an effect on the world. We can see that the individual things that we do have a strong. We can see that they are connected to whether good things or bad things, or whether the benefit or the harm of the world, and it is becoming clearer and clearer to us. And so in this way, the good and bad acts of one person are becoming the good and bad of the world. They are really connected to the happiness and the suffering that is in the world. And so, in this way, when we really examine the good and bad that we do, we see that it is becoming even more profound and even more vast. So in these days, in Buddhism, we talk all about, with good people, we talk about the precious human body, the precious human body. We say it's precious, it's sacred, it's precious and important. But many people, when you look at it, you say, how can we say that that humans are actually precious or that they're important or sacred in any way? Because the more and more people there are in the world, the worse things the worse things get in the world. It's a great ruin for the world that there are people. And so when you Buddhists say that people are important, that they're sacred, and yet all the problems in the world come out of people. So how is it that we can say that the human body is precious? And so so it's just that we are. So for this reason, when we think about it, the body, it's actually precious, but we just don't really know how to use it. And because we don't know how to use it, then basically things just aren't really working out as they should. I mean, there's not much else you can really say about it. Fundamentally, what it comes at is in terms of the good and bad. We don't really distinguish between the short term and the long term. We have the ability to be able to distinguish what is good and bad in the long and the short term. We have that ability, but though we have it, we don't really use it. Or if we use it, we only use it for selfish purposes. And because of that, that is what the great ruin in this world is coming from. And so that is why there are so many difficulties. Actually, when we think about it, we think about this is something I've said before, but if you think about all of the frightening carnivorous beasts that are out there, lions and tigers and leopards and so forth, if we hear that there's a tiger a few kilometers off, we all get scared about it. But actually, what is it that really is the most scary carnivorous beast in the world? It's humans. Humans are really actually quite terrifying. And so this is something that we need to really think about. We need to understand really that it's because of the good and the bad that people do that really determines how the world on the fundamental level is has either happiness or peace or happiness in the world. It's very tightly connected with this.
지수롱아디 치넘교 돈이 지수롱 개요만. 나졸리아 베네 심진 大了 쳐와서도 쳐와 노부 대양 아술민도 애는 데모노부 디조인 아술이야만에 제상 아주 빡빡 쳐보 개요만에 오늘 전에 지 wildlife 찍당 아주 오늘 전에 뿜버도니 라자 강가면 증거 주는 정도 말해 이베네 아주 지다 신앙 사부스는 다도 년가 사부스는 다도 다디 아주 여기가 레버스는 다도 아주 밀리아 남주주의 되버들 신앙 사부래 자신부래 자신부 고가수에다 신남인데를 시하래 신앙 사부 임베다 가지고 배주려고 땅을 이미네 신앙 사부 시다래 제상 아주 미 신앙 사부 임베디 칠이요 말 망을요래 제상 나를 양 아주 요야고 땅 상을 땅 마시비나 아니 아주 신앙 사부사디 찬주고래 제상 디균젠데네 양gar 가리톨레인 거르스나 류가 좀 임베지 낭셈 셈리 가르스 칸 나도 처원 베스남도 하르디 계신 분인데 버르지 용디 얘기를 성도
And so when we say that people are what are most terrifying, then it's not an external thing. It's not like people have sharp fangs. It's not like we have claws. It's not like we have thick hide or anything like that. We have this very light skin or very thin skin, and if we try to do anything, we're just immediately going to harm ourselves. That is not what is terrifying about humans. What's terrifying about humans, what's dangerous about humans is our intelligence. It's both terrifying and it's also really sacred and precious. It's sacred and precious because it's unlike anything else. But it's terrifying when we don't know how to use it properly. That is when it becomes terrifying. And so it's not a question of the external appearance of things. It's the internal way things are. And so if we don't think about this, if we don't think about the internal things, that's when the people are really terrifying. So when we want to change ourselves, it's not a question of just changing the appearance of our body and speech. It's important for us to turn our minds inward and look inside ourselves.